Alright, so today is day 3. We're going to be solving linear systems with technology. You have to be able to do a little bit of algebra first, or else you won't be able to get the equation into your calculator. So as you can see in the notes here, the very first step says express each of the linear equations in the slope y-intercept form. Okay, so please be reading as we go along here. So it says graph each equation by entering them as y1 and y2 in the standard window setting. So you're looking for this button on the top left of your calculator, y equals. This standard window setting, you can make sure you have that by pressing zoom 6. So hit the zoom button, which is up in the middle at the top of the calculator, and then hit the number 6. That just puts it in the standard window. You know how you have your smartphones, you can like pinch, pull, move around on a smartphone? Well, these are not like that. They have like really old settings where like the window, you have to do it manually, but the standard window you can get by zoom 6. So to find the point of intersection, you follow these button sequences. You hit second trace. You don't have to do this right now, but we're just showing you how to do it. Second trace, and then you hit number 5, and then you hit enter 3 times. That's how it's done. And I wouldn't worry too much about this second bullet here. Okay, so here's a worked out example for you. So the equations on the left is the system that you've been given. You have to take the system that you're given, each equation, one by one, isolate into mx plus b format. So you can see in the first one, all you have to do is move the 3x to the other side, make it a negative 3x. And for the second one, you can see the x has been moved over. So positive x on the left is negative x on the right. And then you're dividing by a negative 2. When you divide by a negative 2, the negatives cancel for the 1/2 x, and then the positive 6 becomes a negative 3. So then you would have to put those two things into your calculator. So let's try that right now. So hit y1, and you're trying to get this screen to show up. Okay. I've chosen these two equations on purpose because there's these little details about the calculator that you have to know. If you're going to be typing in a negative in the front, you have to actually use the negative button. The negative button is way at the bottom here. So don't use the minus button for a negative in the front. But then like you can see in the y2 equation, you can use the minus button there. So it's just these little things about the calculator. And then like how would you type in the fraction 1/2 in front of the x? Well, you put it in a bracket here. And then how do you find the x button? The x button is right up here next to alpha and mode up here. So that's the x button. Okay. So yeah, this is the calculator that you need for high school math in Alberta. And I have about 10 or so that you can borrow, but ultimately if I run out, then you're kind of on your own. Okay, so these two equations here, so you can go ahead and isolate for y, and then we'll put them in the calculator. All right, so for the first one, how would you isolate for y in the first equation? All you got to do is what? What do you got to do with this? Yeah, all that positive x just needs to go to the other side as a negative x. So there's that first one. And if you're watching the video right now, I'm just writing on the whiteboard, so you won't be able to see what we're doing, but the equations will be shown on the calculator shortly. Now for the second equation, would you rather move the 2x over or move the y over? Yeah, because it's already 1y, it's negative, so if it's negative, I would send the negative y to the other side as a positive y. What does that mean for the 7? Yeah, the 7's got to come over. So those are the two equations. So then you open up this calculator. See how important that first step is, though? If you can't isolate for y, then you're not even going to be able to use this calculator. So make sure everything's cleared out of there. And y1 will be, of course, negative x. You have to use the negative button at the bottom. And then this x plus the 2. Hit the down cursor. You can be now typing into y2. And it's 2x and a minus 7. And for this one, you can use the minus button because it's not in the front. So then you go ahead, graph. And there it is. And like if this was a multiple choice question, you don't have to show any of your work. You're more than welcome to go ahead and use this calculator. So here's the solution. Hit second trace. The second button gets you into the features that are colored yellow on my calculator. And this one says here calc, C-A-L-C. So the calculate menu. And those 4 options above you actually will learn in probably Math 20. But number 5, there's the one you want. So you hit 5. And then all you gotta do is hit enter, enter, enter. And that's the answer, 3, negative 1. So on my graph, I would go ahead and find 3, negative 1. And then like it doesn't have to be perfect if you don't want it to be. You can just sketch it. But if you want it to be perfect, what you can do is you can hit second graph. If you look at this calculator, second graph brings you to a table of values. So you can actually map out a few points. So when x is 0, y is 2. When x is 1, y is 1. When x is 2, y is 0. So there's one of the equations. And then for the other graph, that's y2, you can go when x is 0, it's negative 7. When x is 1, it's negative 5. And you can see here, it's going to cross like that. So you can actually use the table to build it perfectly. Okay, because when you're just staring at the graph, like it's not an iPhone or a Samsung or anything like this, so it's really pixelated. It's not perfect. Okay, but it does the math really good. You just have to know how to use it. Okay, so like yesterday we were doing a whole bunch of graphing by hand. So you can totally use this calculator now to support you in that. Just by as long as you can isolate into y equals mx plus b, then like you can totally use this calculator to support you. So you have to be able to do this. This is probably the most important thing. Isolate or convert or do algebra to get into this format so that you can type it into the calculator. Okay, so what do you guys have for number 2? You should have negative 2x plus 3. Yeah? And then for the second one, you send the 4x over. So negative 4x plus a 5. And then you have to divide by 3. How many you got that one? Okay, so when you go to type this in, this one's a little bit more interesting in terms of making mistakes when you type in, because it's got those fractions, right? So I'd clear whatever's in there. Oh, come on. Okay, y1 negative 2x plus 3. And if you use the minus button, you'll get a syntax error, right? So you have to use the negative button. And now down here, for that negative 4/3, I would put the negative 4/3 in a bracket like this, and that coefficient, guys, looking here, that coefficient times is by x, and then you have to add another 5/3. So this calculator can be a little bit interesting when it comes to fractions and things in the denominator, so I always be careful with brackets and such. Okay. Got something else similar to that? So then you go second trace, number 5, enter, enter, enter. So the answer is 2 comma negative 1 for this one. And again, if you want to sketch this out perfectly, then you go second graph to the table and just grab some points that work. So I would go like 0, 3 is a point. When x is 0, y is 3. And when x is 1, y is 1. When x is 1, y is 1. So then I'd grab my straight edge and I would do that. So that's for the first graph, if you use these ones. Okay, and then for the second graph, I would probably use a couple perfect points, maybe this one here and this one here. So when x is negative 1, it's 3. And when x is 2, it's negative 1. And then I'd connect those two like this. Okay, and then the point where it crosses was 2, negative 1, which was right there. Okay, so you can use the table to build it perfectly. Otherwise, it's just a sketch. But if you do just a sketch, and you've done second trace 5 intersect, and you have the exact answer, it should be okay. Like especially if you're just answering like a multiple choice question. Okay, well, I'll give you time for number 3. Here. Okay, for number 3, when you go to isolate, the first one, you want to send the 5x over. Becomes minus 5x. Then you have to divide by 3. So we got minus 5/3, going to be times by x, plus 65/3, like whatever that is. The calculator can handle that, no problem. Okay, so you can type it in just like that. Now for the second one, you want to go, okay, send the 2x to the other side and you're done. So I'm thinking with this one, you might not even be able to fit it in the window. That's the standard window. So let's go take a look. Yeah, you can like barely see it in the top right corner. So I can show you how to adjust that. Trust yourself. Okay, so we have a minus 5/3. Minus 5/3 x plus a 65/3. Okay, and you can see here that like it doesn't matter that how you don't have to type in like a decimal or anything. Now for the next one, minus 2x plus a 25. Now on the standard window, when you graph it, you like barely can see it up in the top corner here. So let me show you, like if this was an iPhone or a Samsung or a smartphone of today's age, you would literally put your fingers on the screen and you would just like drag over, maybe zoom out, pinch, pull, zoom out, and you'd have it. But this thing, you can't do that. So what you have to do is hit this window button, and then you have to adjust the window manually. The window button. The smartphone calculator you can use is desmos.com, and that one does this, will be way more user friendly, but you can't use that on an exam. So it's mostly about exam security because you can't have your phone and smartphone in a test or whatever. Okay, so for this window, like, what do you want to see more of the graph? You want to see more to the right and more up. Do you guys agree with that? It's like tucked away in the top right. So you want to see more to the right and more up. So when you hit the window button, and guys, this is very important for using this calculator. Look at X min and X max. That just means how far left is the graph going to go and how far right is the graph going to go. So I don't need a ton of negatives, so let's go -5. But I'm going to go to like 25 to the right, and I just chose 25 randomly. I just chose a big number. So that just means 5 left and 25 right. Same for the Y min. I don't need to go lower, so I'll make that less. But I need to go higher, so let's go Y max 25. So then it scoots the window off to the right a bit and up, and then you can see it a little bit better. So for example, this one, I wouldn't even bother really sketching it into your graph. But you can see that these lines are pretty tight in this window. And then like later on, they'll spread apart, but in this window, they're close together. Second trace, 5. Enter, enter, enter. So that's the answer, 10, 5. 10, 5, that's the answer. And then here's a quick double check. Plug in a 10 into X. 2 times 10, 20, plus 5, 25. So it works for the bottom equation. Plug in a 10 here. 5 times 10, 50. Plug in a 5 there. 3 times 5, 15. 50 and 15 makes 65. So it's a quick check like that. Okay, so then in my workbook here, there's just a worked out example and extra notes here. Oh, this one thing with this second page here. So you can see here, this is from the textbook. And you notice the textbook doesn't even use the brackets. So like I was just giving you a strategy to be extra careful. But here Girard creates a table of values for these equations. How could Girard use the table to determine the solution of the linear system? Which x value, so look at this, scan down this x value. Which x value do you have the same y? Do you guys see right here? So for this second page, highlight the row that says 4, 2, 2. Did you guys see that? This will be a multiple choice question on your exam. So if you're trying to prepare yourself, highlight this one here. Because if you look at this graph, what it's telling you is that when x is 4, graph 1 will be a value of 2, and graph 2 will be a value of 2. So it means that that point is on both graphs. And if the point is on both graphs, then that's where the two graphs cross. Okay, so make sure you highlight that. That is an exam question right there. Yeah. Okay, so there's the assignment. So I'm going to give you guys about 15 minutes to try this for a bit more. And then we're going to move on to some harder stuff today.